Fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. Welcome to the Wilson Blade version 9 racket review. This is the 9th generation of Wilson Blade. It started with the N Blade, which was the softest, the most flexible one. This one is also relatively flexible, kind of in the mid-range there at 62 RA strung, so a pretty comfortable frame and a racket that suits control players. But quite a wide range of levels. You can be an intermediate, you can go all the way up to the pro level. You see this racket, the 16-19-98 Blade, pretty much everywhere you go. Many club players, many pros use this racket in some kind of generation. What's new with version 9 besides this new green cosmetic? And not sure if it's better or worse than the previous one. It's pretty tidy, pretty clean, and the specs of the racket are very similar. Overall, the rackets are very similar. The mold, the structure of the racket is the same, and the layup is also very, very close. So this is a small refinement of the very popular Wilson Blade version 8. And if you know a bit of Blade history, there are different fans of different generations. Most fans I see like either the K Factor, which was generation 2 or 3, not quite sure, don't quote me on that. There are many fans of the version 5. I was myself a user of that one. And the black one with the stripes on the sides. That's a great blade as well. Some players love the countervail. That was my least favorite. I still like the racket. The racket's not a bad racket, but it's so dampened and muted that was kind of hard to know exactly where the ball was going. Really like the version 7 where the flex and the cupping in the string bend and the dwell time was excellent on that version. Version 8 firmed up the feel a bit, gave you a bit more power, a bit more stability. And I feel like the stability is improved also in version 9. And not going into kind of the tech jargon that the manufacturers usually use to talk about similar things, like, or the same things, you know, whether you are, there's not that many things you can do with a tennis racket to make it play differently. You have the graphite, and then you can mix things with the layup and how the carbon is laid up in the racket. And they have also changed to a clip and go grommet system, which makes it easier to replace grommets. And if you do that a lot, or if you're a guy that really doesn't like changing grommets, such as I, then you will appreciate that, but that will be more of a practical point of view, won't change the playability of the racket. I did try the 1820. There's a review on my channel and on tennisnerd.net. I found that pretty demanding. I'm not a 98 1820 guy that much anymore. I prefer to have a little bit more help with the lift. Playing more on clay, needing to use more spin as I'm playing slightly better players since I'm playing more tennis. So for me personally, I still like a 98, but I do like a bit more of an open pattern. The issue with the 1820, quite demanding, quite low trajectory. The ball just goes more like a missile. As it has more strings, it will also have a higher swing weight. And that's how the racket moves through there, how heavy it feels. And that one is lower on the 1619. Gives you room for customization, but also gives you a little bit more arc on the ball, which I think is very helpful these days. I've tried it customized and uncustomized. I tried it with a few different string setups. 4G, I tried it with Hyper G round. Both strings are two favorites of mine. Luxilon 4G is a great one, but Hyper G is also excellent, and the Hyper G round is a little bit slicker, a little bit less grabby on the ball, a bit spinny, but also not quite as firm. So I do find that string to be excellent as well. And I've tried it stock form, and that's how I started it. Then I added a bunch of weight to the handle, quite a lot, like 10 grams, 15 grams, and around 2.5 grams to the sides of the racket. I even tried it with extra weight here, just to see how it plays with different configurations. I do like it more with a bit of weight, suits my game a bit more. I think to have it around 3.9 gives the blade a little bit more pop, a little bit more power, and it doesn't really hurt the maneuverability too much, in my opinion. Although you might be more of a person who plays like a bit more polarized, so you want to put weight in these polar ends of the racket. But overall, this racket is great. It's an excellent control frame, one of the best on the market. Competes with rackets like the Radical, the Pure Strike 98, Radical MP that is, and the Pro, depending on how you customize it, and Dunlop CX200. There are slight differences in feel of all these models. They're all decent rackets. I think myself and many other content creators in the racket space talk about how rackets are a bit more even these days. There are not so many flops being released, and This is definitely not a flop. I like this one. I would say a bit more than the V8 after extensive testing. I was a bit on and off with it. I feel like it's a tad more stable and maybe a bit more power. With some customization, it's really a racket I enjoy to play with. Could play a tournament with this one, no issues at all, because I think it's a good frame. It's not going to be the most forgiving. It's a blade. You're going to have that slightly thinner beam, and you're going to have some power from the swing weight, but it's not going to be a power racket. And it's not going to give you loads of spin, even though in the 1619 version. If you want a bit more help, but still within the Blade family, the Blade 104, as reviewed on this channel, or Blade 100, which I haven't not yet tried, and I'm waiting for it. I think it's back ordered. Those are good options for those rackets. But the Blade is very much more of the same. I would say maybe a tad of an improvement. The racket brands overall, most of them don't do a lot of changes in between some generations. And incrementally the Blade has been going from V7, a bit more flex, a little bit firmer for the V8, and now with V9 it's a tad more firmer, maybe a little bit more dampened. It's not like you don't feel the ball at all, but there's a bit more dampening, I feel like, in it. But overall you could easily switch between V8 and V9 without really skipping a beat. So you choose the cosmetic you like. I mean, if you want to grab a bargain, there are plenty of V8s used or new for sale, so those that could be a good option if that's what you're looking for. But if you like the cosmetic, if you want the latest, then the V9 is great. This is my favorite blade of the new V9s I've tried. I haven't tried 100 yet. Works well on the one-handed backhand. Decent pop on serve, especially with a little bit more weight. Maneuverable, just does most things well. I think this is my favorite between the Radical MP, which I used quite seriously for a while, and the CX200, which with some weight is a good stick. Comes very under spec. And getting into racket specs, I must say I got two of these because I wanted to switch to this racket. I was like feeling it for a while that I'd like maybe this could be a racket I just play with. Blade is one of those like rackets you don't have to think so much. It's just going to be a good racket. It's always been good. It's going to be a solid racket. That's why it's so popular among pro players. I was contemplating that, but I think I needed a bit more power maybe. Both of the blades I got came in at pretty much exactly the same spec. So I think really what they try to do, Wilson, here, after some complaints, rightly so, which, you know, this kind of complaint happens over and over again in the racket industry, is that quality control needs to improve. We need to have rackets, if you buy two, that are at least within the same range, so you can have two matched rackets. You don't switch to another racket mid-match and you have a completely different playing experience. Both my rackets were spot on. They didn't really need to adjust anything, so I think it's improved. They came from different sources as well and not like review samples, so the quality control is better. That's also what I heard from other playtester. So the blade, solid, tiny bit dampened, good pop for a control racket, but you need to bring it. You need to bring your spin, you need to bring your power, and they can handle flat balls, can handle spinnier shots, but it's first and foremost a control racket. So if you're not looking for control, this is not a racket to get. You can go for the bigger head size versions in that case, but one of the best control rackets on the market is gonna remain that. I find it a little bit more comfortable as well than the Strike, for example. Easier to use straight out of the box than the CX200. And I do prefer the feel slightly over the Radical MP, although the Radical MP is also a good stick. So those two I think are my favorite control rackets in that kind of middle range control racket that can suit a lot of players right now. Excellent update, happy with it. You can argue that it's not that much of an update. This thing we can say about almost every brand, every release. Head are also doing this, and Babolat now, especially with the Strikes, we're pretty close to the previous Strikes. And maybe Yonex is the only ones that really push the envelope with the releases. But to give Wilson some credit, although this one is very similar to V8, they do try with new models like Shift and Clash and so on. So that is kind of fun, at least. I really like it. I think if you're looking for control, but you don't want to go all the way to a prestige pro staff style racket, then the Blade is a way to go. That's it for this review. If you want any more reviews, help, advice, you go to tennisnerd.net. Please subscribe to our newsletter. We're gonna have some extra deals there and stuff. There's also a merch shop that we're working on. And if you like the stuff I do and want a more personal approach to it, you check out my members page either on YouTube here or on Patreon. That's it for today. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.